would learn to stop playing on the highway. I'm 100% serious about that. I don't know, it's technology or something gets people, they can't concentrate on the basics anymore. If they're not looking at a screen, something about, the images in front of their face in real life, like crossing a highway like this when people are going 60 miles an hour coming towards you in the fog. Now, the reason I say that this kind of things, because 20 years ago, nobody would do that. So there's only been one common denominator in the last 20 years, and that is the internet and technology. There's some kind of effect the internet and technology has on people between what's reality and what's not real. Now, one thing that never really took off yet is those headsets that have people doing crazy things on the headset. They're not going to be popular, but what is taking off is artificial intelligence. I mean, I personally know people who some of their videos have been artificially intelligent, changed in the video, and that's not the real them. And they're giving people this false reality of who they are, and they're giving themselves a false reality of their reality. That's not their reality. And I've been saying this for 10 years and nobody believed me. No, I've been saying it for 15 years. You're going to have guys who have robotic girlfriends and wives in the future. It's the next step to humanity. God said at the Tower of Babel in the Old Testament, Tower of Babel, we were all speaking one language, he said. And they built a tower going up into the heavens. Nobody knows how tall it was. God looked down and said, if this is what they can accomplish, all speaking with one voice, and it's one of the most fascinating statements by God in the entire Bible that nobody talks about. If this is what they can accomplish by speaking one language, then nothing would be impossible for them. Nothing would be impossible for them. You think, well, what would that be? So he confused all their languages at the Tower of Babel, all of the earth, so they couldn't work together. But today we have computers and translators. I could be standing next to a guy from any other country in the world, speak into a machine, and the machine will tell him what I'm saying. He can speak into the machine, and it'll tell me what he's saying. So we could build a Tower of Babel today, like going to Mars and starting a colony, like putting a base on the moon is what they're deciding to do right now. Or building robots that look 80% like humans and function like humans within the next decade. And they're going to have personal identification numbers, and you will be able to marry your robot, most likely. And you'll go out with your friends. I know you're going to laugh, but it's coming. You'll go out and you'll say, hey, you want to go out with George and Betty this weekend to dinner? And George is a real person, and Betty is a robot person that's married to your friend George. And then we don't need wives anymore, and we don't need to have children anymore. Just like, in the year 2525, if man is still alive, if. Now, there's a phrase in the book of Revelation, if Jesus did not, talking about the 7-year tribulation, the last 3.5 years of the tribulation, after the rapture and everything, if Jesus did not cut short the last days of the tribulation, he said, you wouldn't even find humans on the earth. They would have completely destroyed themselves. Now, I'm paraphrasing so you understand. That's what it means. Because that's going to be a time where China's going to come down with a 200 million man army in the Battle of Armageddon, getting ready for the Battle of Armageddon against all the other militaries that are left on Earth. And one of them will not be the American military. During the rapture, if only like 35% of Americans are raptured, this country will dissolve overnight. We barely surviving now. You get rid of 35% of Americans are raptured because they're born-again Christians. The whole world, well, in America, the whole America will dissolve, and then China and India and Russia will come over to America and instantly divide it up for the resources. And start, I'm not making this up, and start enslaving everyone. So you think, hey, well, if I'm not raptured, I'll start believing in Jesus during the tribulation. No, you probably won't. That was the United States Border Patrol right there. Now, I'm only doing 50 miles an hour. I've never seen them. That was the United States Border Patrol on the Oregon coast. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm not giving a political opinion. I got nothing against them. I'm saying the whole world is changing rapidly. And let me finish here. One day you're going to go out with Bob and Betty, except Betty's going to be a robot. And Betty's going to say, Bob's going to say, I want the T-bone steak with real thick, creamy mushroom sauce and extra salt and butter. And his robot, Betty, is going to say, now, Bob, you know what the doctor said, Bob. Don't you think you should get the salad with the dressing on the side, Bob? You will live 3.8 years longer, Bob, if you start eating the Caesar salad. And Bob will be telling Betty in the restaurant, mind your own business, you robotic woman. And Bob will be arguing in public with his robotic wife. Within 10 years, within 2035, it's all going to happen. You mark my word. When? You'll remember the first time you go to the grocery store, just minding your own business, buying your groceries, walking in, and you'll see the first time you remember seeing a guy walk in with his robotic girlfriend, hand in hand. You'll see it. And everybody will stand there with their jaw on the ground going, huh? What the heck? And if Jesus doesn't come back for 30 more years, which I believe he's going to come back within 15 years, in my opinion, Bob will just send his robot into the grocery store to buy the food for him while he's out playing golf. He'll be like the Mormon guys in southern Utah. Instead of having 5 wives, he'll have 5 robotic wives. One of his wives is at home cleaning. One of his wives is doing the investments. One of his wives is doing the laundry. One of his wives is at the grocery store buying his food. Then he'll have an automated car from Elon Musk. And the only thing Bob will have to do is play golf all day. And then he'll start to despise golf. And Bob will be a very lonely, unsatisfied Bob. Because he's living outside of the will of God. So no matter how much you change the system, there's one thing you cannot change no matter how much you try. You cannot remove God from your life or the equation. Because without God, none of this exists. Without God's rules, you can't be happy or receive joy in your life. Without following Jesus Christ, you cannot receive salvation, and you cannot, the judgment day is coming. You cannot escape judgment day without Jesus. So we can invent the Tower of Babel, we can invent the robots, we could have the government give us all tax-free, free housing, free food, everything. But if you leave God and Jesus and the Holy Spirit out of the equation, the only thing you'll have is misery. And you already know this in your heart. In your heart, everyone knows, but you try to ignore it. And you try to avoid reality. They say within 10 years, 50% of the jobs in America will be gone because of artificial intelligence will be doing all the jobs for you. Except the extremely high labor-intensive jobs will never go away. Like walking into a deli and trying to get some fried chicken, you're never going to get a robot that's going to hand you fried chicken over the counter and wait. It's not going to happen. Not for a long time anyway. Not in our lifetime. Maybe in the next generation, if the Lord wasn't coming back. I'll leave you right there. You probably disagree with 80% of everything I'm saying. So I will leave it right there. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm only repeating what they're saying every day on the news. It's in the Bible, and the right-wing news, the left-wing news, they all are talking about the same stuff every single day. Now, I don't pull this stuff out of a hat. No. This is something that they guarantee is coming. Every billionaire in the world is saying, this is what we're going to give you. Robots and drones delivering your groceries. And we're going to take all your jobs away. And we're going to have the government just give you credits so you can live your life. Nobody will actually have money. You'll just have credits and you can just stay home. Like a perfect utopian lifestyle. And it's exactly what talks about in the book of Revelation. It's one of the actual first times that the world is agreeing with the Bible. They're both saying the same thing is coming. But what blows my mind is about 80% of people today say, I don't believe it. I'm going to ignore it. I mean, I just drove by a small parking lot of used automobiles and trucks here on the Oregon coast, and most of them have 200,000 miles for $16,000 or $20,000. $20,000 for a used 15-year-old truck that's got 220,000 miles. So don't you believe what you're seeing right in front of your face. You know, I will leave you with this one thing. Jesus said, believe what you're seeing. He said, if you don't believe me, at least believe upon the miracles that you're seeing in front of your face. Here comes the fire department. That's one thing I like about Oregon. Everybody pulls over out of respect for the firemen and the police when they got their lights on. At least on the Oregon coast with the small towns, everybody pulls over, and I really appreciate that. It's a sign of respect. They're going to help one of our neighbors. The most or the least you could do is just pull over and get the hell out of their way. Or I should say the heck out of their way. So Jesus said, if you don't believe the word, if you don't believe what I, Jesus, am telling you, at least believe the miracles. I just raised someone from the dead. I just healed the blind. I just made the lame walk. I just healed the lepers right in front of your face. We know, he says, we know that only God can do these things. And the Jews back then believed that only God could do these miracles. But even though they were witnessing what was happening right in front of their face, they said, no, that's not, Jesus is not from God. There's some kind of magic going on here. We're not going to believe this. There's some kind of hocus pocus. We're not going to believe what we're seeing. You know, I don't believe in UFOs, but I've always believed if a UFO shows up. Now, I don't believe in UFOs. I believe in a lot of it's like angelic activity, in my opinion. But I always said if a UFO shows up on the front lawn of the White House, the majority of people wouldn't believe it. They think it was a trick or some kind of, well, today if a UFO shows up on the front lawn of the White House, they'll blame Donald Trump for it. They'll say, this is Donald Trump's fault.